So we're here. Welcome to the True Leadership Show. We're glad you're here with us, and just excited, as always, every Monday to bring you leadership guidance, ways to different strengthen our leadership so we can strengthen others. And by being true to ourselves, we can be true leaders, which makes us true to others too. And so really always appreciate this time to work. My name is Chris Tice. I'm your host. I always get to work with the amazing Mike Van Pelt and Jim T. Chong, our guest hosts. If you ever want to be a part of the show and be live with us, let us know. We'll get you connected in that fashion and to discuss these topics. And a couple weeks ago, we started the Leaders Are Skilled main category. And today, as you'll see in the caption, we're talking about leaders are receivers or as receivers. Now, what does that mean? So the last 2 weeks, we spoke specifically on being communicators, like what we put out there and how we put it out there. And then the next week we talked about being a listener, being not just willing to listen, but to actually listen. And the next step that comes from that is receiving the information. How do you receive it? And then what are you doing with it? So in the next couple weeks, we're actually going to be talking about training and developing and what we do with the very information that we're given. And it's very, very, very important in leadership because that's what gives us the skill of great communication. Yes, we talked about that in week one. It's going to come up a lot, especially during this main category as a skill, because what you receive as the information is going to be what becomes your output. And if you're not doing it right, what you put back out there from what you were told or what you heard or what you saw, what you received, how you utilize that as a skill could make or break your leadership. And so, Mike, I'm going to kick it off with you. He's the True Man coach, True Man life coach, how we go, and hosts the True Man podcast. And so, Mike, what are some different ways that, or maybe words you use when you think about how you receive input, whether it's something someone did or something someone said? What are different ways that we receive that so we can process it correctly, so when we put it back out there, we're given the right message?
It's a good question. So obviously they're words, right? You're listening for somebody's words. One of the things we get to do a little bit of on here, but never as good as in person, right, is somebody's body language. You know, are they looking at you? Well, you know, we have this problem of phone addiction. I'm going to say globally because we all have phones nowadays. But how many times are you talking with somebody and they're looking at their phone? And the reality of that is you can't do two things at once. So, you know, when you know, what is somebody doing? How are they reacting? How are they responding question wise? I mean, do they even have the ability to ask a follow-up question? That's actually a good way to see if somebody's listening, by the way. Ask good questions and see if they respond back. But, you know, I think all of those things are, you know, great receiver attributes. And then I got to say this, and maybe I'm jumping ahead. So if I am, too bad.
Go with it.
I haven't always been a good receiver in terms of somebody complimenting me or, you know, feedback. Now, when I was a good receiver, unfortunately, was when something negative was coming at me, and then I internalized it, and that wasn't good. And so I'm actually learning to try to be more present with people. And when I get a compliment, I want to try to be grateful to them. So there are a couple of different things going on here when we're talking about receiving too. So, you know, I'm learning to be a very humble and good receiver on the receiving end. So there's that too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And no, you jumped ahead, but it was actually the perfect segue to where we're going to head next. In that, receiving the message appropriately. Okay, and we talked quite a bit last week about the difference between listening and hearing. It's one thing if I hear you. Okay, remember I brought up the Charlie Brown teacher. You could always hear the teacher. You never knew what the teacher was saying. Okay, even though the kids acted like they did. But when you're actively listening to somebody, you're actually receiving that message. And the bigger thing that comes from it, Jim, this is where I'd like to see you go with this, is especially with the way you connect with people on so many different levels and so many different ways and so many different avenues, is needing to be able to keep all of that straight when you are receiving so much information at once. How do you keep it all straight? What are some good tips and tricks that leaders can be using to keep all these different things straight? I mean, if you go to zoomturtle.com, there's a lot going on there. So but we're receiving so much input from so many different avenues: karaoke, books, speaking engagements, being an MC, hosting events, cultural events, things like that. There's a lot to receive there. So how do you keep those things straight when all that's just coming at you so fast sometimes?
I'm sorry, did you say something? No, I'm just messing with you. Based on what Mike said. First off, I got to tell you, it's all about this, all right? This is my branding just right up front. It's the power of the panda. That's what you're going to hear about, okay? It's the power of the panda to be able to focus and ponder. He's pondering life. But the whole thing is that one thing is that you have to know exactly definitively what you are representing. And it is a work in progress. I can tell you, if you go to zoomturtle.com, you see about, 7,500 buttons on there. But they are organized in a fashion that I understand. And so I think to be present at the moment is really key. But, really first it starts with you knowing exactly what you're representing. If you know this is what you're representing and you look at it and look at everything else as a spoke, I've really realized this has helped me a lot. For instance, in GCC, the Global Cooperative Chamber, you represent leadership. When you know that, wouldn't you say that you can talk about almost anything, as long as you know your core role is to really help perpetuate leadership? It helps define the path you will take, right? Would you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
For me, I focus on being a hub. By definition, not everyone can be a hub. Not everyone can be a spoke for a specific thing. You're a leadership expert because that's what you chose to focus on. You spent many years developing it as a first responder. You have a program developed. Mike is a leader, or really prominent in being a true man and podcasting, because that's what he focuses on. And as long as he focuses on that, which not everyone can do, right? And that's kudos to you guys. That's great, because you know exactly what your role is. Now, I serve as a hub. By nature, I have to be open to different sorts of vehicles and conduits to different things. So I have to sit and listen. But if and I've made this mistake, if I try to do everything, that's different than trying to help somebody implement something off of them being the spoke or focused on something. So if you know your core role in something, you're very defined on what you want to do, and you really have that as your light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and everything falls into place. For me, I know I'm going to be a hub. I know that I'm going to represent multicultural in some way, shape, or form, hence fantastic foreigners, right? I know that Zoom Turtle is not scattered, even though people may say, I don't know how to do this. Well, if you go into encyclopedia, open up any page, what's this? Well, encyclopedia is used differently than something you go specifically towards. You have to know what you're looking at in encyclopedia. So I'm very defined in terms of what I want to represent, how I want to represent it. And when you're doing that, you can do multiple things. You just got to know what role you're playing in at that specific time. Here, you're leading the discussion, but we're talking about true leadership. No matter what we talk about, that's the guiding light. We do have a hub that will guide us, and you're very clear in terms of the direction you want to take us, no matter what I bring up. Would that be correct, Chris?
Yeah.
So I think having it defined, if I haven't gotten it across, and knowing what role you really play are two essential things, rather than try to be all things to all people. And I've been there, right? It doesn't work very well, but you do learn. There's time and place for things. So back to you, Chris. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And you brought up a couple great points in the fact of, what is the mission in the moment? I say that to a lot of leaders all the time.
Oh, love it.
What's the mission in the moment? And, I get some that they start going, to the macro view almost immediately. Well, by the end of December, keep in mind, it might be like March when we're having this conversation. We got to have this done. Well, no. The mission in the moment is what's going on right now. What's the input you're receiving right now? I understand December. I understand goals. I work on goal setting and goal getting. We're going to be talking about that later on throughout the year on this program. But the thing is, the mission in the moment is what needs to be created in order to be able to receive what's going on. So if you do have a lot coming at you, take a second and determine what is the most important thing right now. What has the highest priority? If in Mike's case, it's getting the podcast out there and taking care of the editing, or he's in an interview right here, right now, and there's something else coming his way or a distraction coming his way. He brought up phones, and like me, my phone's on Do Not Disturb. It's on mute. The family knows that when the office door is closed and locked, that's when I'm live or doing something that I need to be able to focus on this right now. Find that, because as you receive the information, you can have that full focus that a leader needs. So that way, when it's time for the output, that's what we're doing. And it creates that intentionality. It also creates that authenticity with the people you're working with right then and there. And that's what builds up that genuineness that we've talked about. We talked about in our last major section on leaders as servants. You are there to serve as a leader. But one of the other things that Mike led into, as we cap the last 10 minutes or so of the show today, is leaders or receivers. We just nailed that, as far as being a communicator, being a listener, all this input coming in. One other thing, write things down and don't just rely on digital. Handwritten is still psychologically proven to be better than typing it in now. Yes, I know with handwritten, you can't set an alarm to it. Okay, fine. Do both then. I don't care. But write things down and be present in the moment to receive the information that's being presented to you. But there's something else in receiving as leaders or receivers I love talking about, because I've been bad at both of them. And that's receiving praise, and that's receiving criticism. Leaders can struggle with this on either one. I've seen some leaders that were amazing at accepting criticism. Amazing at it. Almost to a fault, because they'd never accept the praise. Or vice versa. They're really good about letting that ego fly and, yeah, give me that trophy, give me that plaque. But then people come up to them and start saying, hey, Jim, I appreciated this, and this, but next time I'd like to see it happen like this. And then they clam up, they turtle shell up, or they get angry, become a raging bull about it. You can't tell me what to do, blah, blah, blah. And then we don't see lasting change that needs to happen, or maybe a fix to a problem. When we talk about safety a lot, I always default back to a good friend of mine was permanently disabled because the leaders wouldn't listen. They didn't receive the safety message of the fact that all these office chairs were falling apart. This guy was very young when this happened. Had a huge, bright career ahead of him. The office chair broke, permanently disabled. And so, but the thing is from the story, as I remember it, and as he told it was, had those guys received the message and just would have fixed the dang chairs or went ahead and used the budget to buy some new ones, never would have happened. So, but they took it as criticism of, you guys don't provide for us, instead of just saying, no, they are crappy chairs, we need to fix them. So, Mike, since you brought it up and you started it, how do we create that balance of accepting praise, receiving praise, and receiving criticism? And, what are some, actually, we're just going to go with that. How do we accept either one? How do we just start to process, what am I receiving here? Because sometimes criticism can be praise as well.
Yeah, right. Seems to go both ways as of late with me. But, what's interesting? Yeah, what's interesting about that is I think it starts with your state of mind and your attitude, right? It's so easy. The easy thing to do is to think maybe somebody's coming at you negatively when they're trying to give you positive praise. So I think it starts with having the right attitude. But I also think, and this is something that I'm learning to do better, that, when somebody compliments you, typically a majority of the time, I'd like to believe, they really mean it. And it's okay for you to say, thanks, I really appreciate that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I know, I've been in positions lately where fortunately, I guess, there's been praise come my way. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not 100% used to it. I'm also not 100% comfortable with it all the time. And so what I'm learning to do is just say thank you, because I know that people, when they dole it out, they really mean it. And, I think it's appropriate to say thank you. And I will say this, and I actually had this conversation with somebody over the weekend. They sent me an email. I have a podcast coming out tomorrow with somebody else I did. And they sent me an email and said, your podcast is going to be coming out on Tuesday. And I responded back with really nothing more, if I remember correctly, other than, thank you for letting me know. And they actually told me, thanks for sending an email saying thank you for letting me know when it's going to be out. And I think what we've done with email, because we're also inundated with it, is that we've forgotten that when you receive something from somebody, that you need to receive it and respond back. That is the right and respectful thing to do, because otherwise somebody may go, well, I don't even know if they got it. I don't know if they received it. And what's amazing to me as I'm thinking about this is how many emails I send out. And I'm going to say, just even for the podcast, where I never receive an email in return. And not only that, but when I post it on social media and highlight somebody was a guest on my show, I'd say it's half or less that even respond when I'm edifying them, believe it or not. Astonishing. So I think it's important to reciprocate in a positive manner, saying, hey, I receive what you're giving me right now, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you for taking the time to either send something to me or say how great I was or whatever the case may be. So that's my 2 cents.
No, and I wholeheartedly agree with that, but I want to add something. Jim, I want to hear your take on this, especially, with all the events and things you put on. Tell me for a second you don't get criticism after an event, especially big events.
Oh.
People go, oh, you should have had people sitting over here. Those should have been pointed more towards us so we could hear better. The littlest of things to the biggest of things. One of the things, though, that I want to piggyback on with Mike here is, well, 2 things, actually. One, yes, receive the praise, and I'll close out on that here when we're about finished up. But also, many people don't receive praise in a very great way. It's, oh, okay, thanks, or yeah, okay, thanks, I did good, whatever. No, you need to celebrate it. And there are definitely different ways to celebrate. You don't have to sit here and jump up and down and say, you know what, put that on the megaphone. I want that in every single email from here on out. When I walk through the door, special music plays. Okay, no, not necessarily, right? But at the same time, it's also receiving criticism with gratitude too. And so, Jim, I'd love to hear your thoughts on receiving criticism with gratitude.
Yeah. Well, if you understand, one thing that's helped me a lot, Mike, maybe you can confirm this. I talk a lot about perspective. If you understand why people are criticizing, is different. Hey, they're mad, they're frustrated at the world because maybe somebody that they cared about died or is not doing well, so they're taking it out on you. So when I hear criticism, I like to first see if it's valid. And 2, if there's a lot of emotion behind it, I want to find out what frame of mind or perspective that person's coming from. Because they may be right from their perspective. I just think everyone hurts every other people. Therefore, you're one of them. Okay, well, if that's your perspective, you're going to give that kind of criticism. And, I deal with major events. I have what we call karaoke is a great thing. I just put premium karaoke. What does premium karaoke and singers showcase mean? Well, it just means that we have great singers. Now think about this. You're in front of a lot of karaoke singers. We have great singers, so we can convert a show. We can convert at any time open karaoke, which we have great singers, to be a show where we have positioned certified showcase singers that we will use. How do you feel if you're not one of the showcase singers? Am I not good enough? Well, from their perspective, maybe that's valid, but this is not open karaoke. This is showcase singing. So I actually redefined it to be premium karaoke showcase singing, because I'm respecting where their perspective's coming in. So when I digest it, I have to see where they are coming from. They're coming from a certain platform. They believe, everyone should sing what they want anytime. Well, yeah, but great. I respect it. And I can respect it when I understand where people are coming from. Does that make sense? Hopefully that.
Yeah. And I think the big thing on either side of the coin goes back to last week. It's listening. If you're not listening,
that's why I was going to say you have to listen.
Listening. Yeah. If you're not listening, you're not properly receiving. If you're just hearing them, you're not receiving the message. And I think that's the bigger discussion today, whether it's praise or criticism or hey, can we do it this way? Hey, can we do that? Hey, I have a suggestion. If you don't actively listen to what they're saying, you're not going to receive it. And that's why this is such a skill, because there's so many times that, and I've done it, and I've heard other leaders do it, like, yeah, I hear you. And then, a couple of days go by, if it was that pressing, or a month too, even into the next year of, hey, when are we going to do this? You told us that you were taking care of it or that you heard us. I don't know what you're talking about. What? Did you not receive my message? That's what a lot of people ask. Did you not receive my message? Whether it's a literal email or you just said something. Nope. You said you heard me. I can't even begin to express how many times I've had people say that they've told a leader, they said they heard me. You said you heard me. No, we never talked about that. We never went over that. No, that's not going to happen. That's not the way it's getting done. Because the message wasn't received right or it wasn't perceived correctly. Either way you want to look at it, whether it's praise or criticism, it doesn't matter. Look into the language that's getting used. I mean, if somebody just comes up with criticism, they're just berating you and everything else. There's probably so many other things going on. It had nothing to do with you or the event. Or maybe if it did, they didn't understand something, and that's just how they know how to respond. How many times have you heard someone say, well, that's just how I am. It's just how I respond to things. Okay, first of all, you and I need to have a totally different discussion. But so much of it is just listening and receiving the message, and then what's going to be my output? What am I going to discern or determine needs to be the response to this? I can say this. When it comes to criticism, I internalize it. I've been known to internalize it, and I'll respond outwardly very well. Hey, yeah, you're right. I messed up. I'm sorry. Or hey, yep, that's cool. We need to start doing it that way. And then I'll go home, or I'll go back into the office where I'll start. Oh man, should I have done this? It's already done. And then the same thing with praise. I actually had a very good friend of mine one time. I received it was a very nice thank you and appreciation time, everything else. I was given some gifts. And I was like, hey guys, thank you. I really appreciate it. And this person pulled me aside, a very good friend of mine pulls me aside, says, you suck at gratitude. More importantly, you suck at receiving gratitude. I was good at thanking everyone else. Like, hey, let's buy this for this person. Let's get them a gift card. Let's call them up front. And she goes, I'm not going to lie. She goes, when you were standing up there giving your little acceptance speech, that sucked. I was like, oh, it did? Yeah. She goes, you're not very good at receiving praise, are you? She goes, you don't think you're worth it.
Like, well, Chris, can I share something real quick?
Wow.
What you shared, we can all relate to, definitely. And I find it helps me be attentive if I just focus on even just reiterating what they say. That's for me, as a hearer. And just to acknowledge it and to say why you're ignoring, not just even a thank you. I mean, that's step one. But Chris, hey, I want to let you know, I really appreciate it. And, I appreciate you telling me about this. That made me feel special. Now, I don't know if I can implement it, but I appreciate that. And that's where I get myself into problems, the last part, because a lot of people have a lot of critique, and they have to be open to the fact that I will stand my ground, because when you say, I hear you, a lot of people think, oh, great, it's going to be implemented. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. I hear you versus I'm going to put it into practice are two different things sometimes. And I think, I'm kind of an over communicator. Mike knows this. I will respond and give you the details of it, because I think it's important that that's my phase too. This is me. And it sometimes gets me in trouble because people think I'm not receiving it. No, I'm just being honest, rather than have you come back to me later and say, well, you said you heard me. Why didn't you implement it? Well, because, I didn't think it was right for the situation, but I heard you. So I try to just get that out of the way. But I realize that's a double-edged sword too. So.
Well, it can be, but I think the biggest thing is no matter whether it's the praises, the criticisms, the suggestions, the, hey, when is this going to happen? Or why did we do it that way? Whatever it may be, if you're actively listening and you're receiving the message, your response will be much more effective. May not always be perfect, may not even always be appropriate. You know, I honestly, when I got off that stage that night, I thought I gave a great thank you speech. I really did. I mean, you know, and they were like, you know, kind of like how Mike was talking, you know, in person is definitely better than virtual because you can read the body language.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I wasn't smiling. I was upbeat. I was grateful and this and that, but it wasn't fully authentic because I didn't feel like I was worth receiving that. So a lot of this boils down to where's our self-worth? Where is our true leadership inside ourselves that allows for the appropriate response to receiving a message, no matter what it may be, whether it's good, bad, right, wrong, indifferent, or ugly. Thinking about being a true leader to yourself and how you can implement receiving these messages, no matter how they are, will determine what comes as the output to what you're doing. Mike Van Pelt, sir, how can people get a hold of you? And any closing remarks?
Mike? Yeah, no, you can get a hold of me at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. You can find my podcast at truemanpodcast.com. Go out, give it a listen. It's good stuff. No, listen, I sometimes being a receiver takes a little work. It's like everything we talk about on here, you know, is some people are, you know, receive more naturally than others. And, you know, for some of us, it takes a little work. And so, you know, I think that it's important to, you know, discern how you need to become a better receiver. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, that's the big thing is I'm not asking anybody to be perfect. I just shared some of my own stories and my own bang-ups and hang-ups, you know, especially in leadership. It's more of, you know, what can we do to make ourselves better each and every day? I'm always working to be better than who I was yesterday. So, Jim, final comments from you, and how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, you can go to either zoomturtle.com. Better is Jim T, as in Tony, jimtchong.com. And love this whole topic here about really receiving feedback. And next time you guys decide, I feel a little left out here. Here's why, because I missed the memo on the striped shirt. So I apologize, but you know, but that's it. I mean, we have two whites and a Wong. Now there's a double jeopardy here because now I don't have my striped shirt. So obviously I didn't receive the message. No, but great topic.
You balanced this out, man. No worries. You balanced this out.
Yeah. So thank you. So,
I didn't think anything of it. So yeah, no, and thank you, gentlemen, always for being on here and just, you know, just really helping everyone out there to be better leaders. That's really what we're after. Receive that message today. Receive this message today. Excuse me. You are a great leader. You are. Yep. No matter what's going on around you, you are a great leader. It's the choices we make each and every day, the messages that we receive, and the things that we put back out there that determine the formal and more appropriate results that can come from being a great leader. You get to choose. Am I a great good leader or am I a great bad leader? You get that choice. How do you receive that message? Receive it as you are a great good leader, and you will be an even greater leader than anything you ever could have imagined. Receive that as inspiration. Get that into your spirit that you are a great leader and you want to do good. You want to have that positive influence that makes the massive impact that inspires others to do good as well. Receive that message today that you have that built into you. Remember the good, learn from the bad. You will be great. Everybody, I want you to have your best day ever. My name is Chris Tice. I co-founded Eagle Fire Enrichment, your leadership solutions company. You can reach me at www.eaglefireenrichment.com or chris@eaglefireenrichment.com. And until next time, make every day great. Remember, can't never did.